Hello, everyone. Welcome to the IYCN Professional Development Workshop Series. My name is Fatima Mustafa. I'm a graduate student at Clarkson University and a current conference team member at the IYCN. I'll be co-hosting this workshop along with my colleague, Ray Borg. I will leave the floor to Ray to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, my name is Ray Borg. I'm a PhD candidate here at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and also delighted to be sharing this workshop series with you all and glad you could make it.
Thank you, Ray, and thank you everyone for joining this time to our workshop from different time zones across the globe. Thank you so much for being with us, and thank you as well for our amazing guest speakers and panelists who accepted our invitation to share their experiences in planning their careers and let us know how they have gotten to their careers at this moment. All right, so let me move on to our next slide, which shows actually the title of our workshop, The Diversity in Careers Paths in Chemistry. As we all know, chemistry degrees at all levels, either being bachelor, master, or PhD, offer great opportunities and great options of career. Those careers could lie into different sectors, as we all know. Those could be in industrial jobs, academic, governmental, non-governmental, non-profit, and entrepreneurial. Those careers as well can cover many technical disciplines of chemistry, organic, inorganic, analytical, and so on. Also, those careers can be bench-based, which means chemists perform experiments to develop a new material, test existing material, making protocol for instrumentation use, developing devices and solutions on a bench, as well as manufacturing larger scale materials. Also, these careers could be away from bench. So think about managerial positions, marketing, consulting, communication, science policy, outreach, and many more. Also, these careers could be actually spread into many applied areas. Think about food, agriculture, medicine, textile, pigments, aerospace, personal care. It could be literally be anywhere, everywhere. What happens for us as students and early career chemists that we sometimes are hesitant where to go, where should we start? Sometimes it's not easy for us to assess our skill sets. So for that, at the IYCN, we thought that it could be a great to create this kind of workshop to meet chemists from across like a different, let's say, disciplines, chemists from the real world, to know from them and to learn and discover how they have planned to reach out to their current careers, as well as how do their careers actually look like. So for that, we have hosted Dr. Han, who is a chemistry professor, Dr. Catherine Rollins, who is an application scientist, Dr. Deng, who has actually combined both chemistry and law, and Dr. Nick Anastas, who works since a long time in environmental protections. Thank you again, all of our amazing speakers, for accepting our invitation, and we are so excited to learn from you about your career pathways. All right, so our guest speakers will highlight their career pathways in 10-minute presentation each, and then afterwards we will be moving to a panel discussion where we will actually highlight and address all of your questions that you have asked in the registration, as well as the question that you will actually, if you have any question, please type your question in the chat box and we will be glad to address them as well in the panel discussion. All right. So let me briefly, before we start, introduce you to our organization, the International Younger Chemists Network, the IYCN. This organization was established 3 years ago, and it is associated with the International Union of Applied Chemistry, of Pure and Applied Chemistry, the IUPAC. The vision of the network is to connect and empower young chemists globally. If you want to know more about our project and how to get involved, please visit our website, IYCN Global. And remember that the membership as well is free, so you're very welcome to join if you are pursuing, actually, if you are pursuing a degree in chemistry or related field, or if you are under 35, or if you are like 5 years from the last degree that you have gotten or the training. So you are definitely welcome to join our network. This photo of us here is back in 2019, where we had our first General Assembly meeting in Paris, and we are looking forward to our next General Assembly in Montreal. Please also keep in contact with us through our social media and let us know if you have any like concern or any question about our organization or how to get involved. All right, so let's get started with our today's workshop, and our first panelist is Dr. Han. Dr. Han is currently working as a lecturer at the National University of Singapore. She will be highlighting her pathway starting from obtaining a degree in chemistry from University of Michigan until her current position. It will be great to have her explaining her pathway. Without further ado, please, Dr. Han, and you are more than welcome as well to share your slides.
Sure. Thank you, Fatima, for the introduction. I believe everyone should be able to see my slides okay right now. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on which time zone you are in. For me, this is slightly after midnight, so a very good morning to all of you from Singapore. I'd first like to thank IYCN for allowing me the opportunity to share with everyone this morning, and also my colleague from the National University of Singapore, Rollins, for making the connection. My name is Han Che. I'm a lecturer with the National University of Singapore. For those of you who may not be familiar, Singapore is a Southeast Asian city-state, and the National University of Singapore, or NUS, is our flagship national university, and our main campus is located on the southwestern side of the country. And my current position with the university is within the Department of Pharmacy, and we sit within the Faculty of Science. We are also one of the oldest departments on campus. Together with the university, we are celebrating our 115-year anniversary this year. As a department, we also pride ourselves for attracting some of the best students in the country. And you can see some lovely pictures of our undergraduate students here. And this picture, don't worry about safe distancing. It's actually taken before the COVID pandemic. Okay, that's why nobody is wearing masks. Right now, I think similar to many other educational institutions, most of our classes are conducted online right now, okay, but we still manage to have fun. So what you see here is actually the celebration that I've had in class with my undergraduate students on doing a virtual dance to celebrate the end of semester last week. So at this point, you may be wondering that how come she's telling us all about her current role in pharmacy? Shouldn't she be actually a chemist? Okay, and actually I am. So be rest assured that my roots are in chemistry, and I received my bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Michigan in 2008. And in putting together this set of slides, I actually had a chance to go back and take a look at some of my old photos and files, which was truly a walk down the memory lane for me as I stumbled across my lab reports from my computational chemistry module, as well as class presentations from my inorganic chemistry module. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't make much sense out of what I was trying to present back then, but hopefully the presentation here makes some sense to some of you. Maybe because I'm never quite an inorganic chemistry person. Okay, I've always been more of a organic chemistry individual at heart. And particularly intrigued by how different molecules interact with receptors within the body, resulting in different either treatment effects or side effects of medications. So what you see on this slide are two molecules, one of it being a $1 million blockbuster drug, and the other one was actually withdrawn from the market, and the company almost went bankrupt as a result of that. So what is actually the difference between the two molecules fundamentally goes back to their chemistry. And that is something that is particularly interesting to me. And as an undergraduate student back then, when I consider where my passion lies for my future career, I would prefer something that allows me to apply my knowledge in chemistry to have a more direct impact on helping people. So with those interests in mind, I think pharmacy becomes a natural choice for me. And therefore, after graduating with my bachelor's degree, I stayed on at the University of Michigan, where I pursued my Doctor of Pharmacy degree. So this is a 4-year health professional degree program. And you can see some nice pictures from my white coat ceremony, as well as from my graduation. And please don't ask me who this guy is. I really have no idea. But this is mom and dad, and here are some of my close friends and classmates from pharmacy school. Beautiful days. And after I graduated from pharmacy school, my heart really lies in clinical practice, because I think this is where I can really apply the knowledge in science and professional skills to help people and impact healthcare. So this is why I decided to pursue residency training subsequently at the University of Chicago hospitals. So here on this slide, you can again see some nice photos of co-residents during residency days, as well as accomplishments graduating from residency. However, as some of you may anticipate, the residency training experience is not all that rosy. And in going through some of my old files, I also stumbled across my duty hours report. And I was reminded of the fact that how I survived my 30-hour call shifts. And you can see that I had 4 of them over 3 weeks, and on average worked about 76 hours per week in that given month. So that was pretty long hours back then. And residency also reinforced the notion that pharmacy is indeed a profession that allows me to apply my knowledge in chemistry in the healthcare setting, because a lot of side effects of our medications actually goes back to their underlying chemistry principles. For instance, a very important question, or very memorable question that I've gotten during one of my call shifts is how probenecid, which is a drug, actually helped to reduce renal toxicity of an antiviral medication. And that fundamentally has to do with the molecular structure of probenecid and how it interacts with receptors within our kidneys. So I thought that was an excellent question, except that it came to me at 3 o'clock in the morning, which I didn't quite appreciate back then. And following graduation from residency, I stayed on at the University of Chicago hospitals and practiced as a clinical pharmacy specialist for the next 4 years. And yes, this photo that you see here with a pager was indeed taken in 2017. So that was, and rather than a flashback to the past. And this mode of communication is still very much prevalent within healthcare, which is conservative, as you can anticipate. And in my role as a clinical pharmacist, so I'm very fortunate to work with an amazing group of physicians and pharmacists as a member of the healthcare team. This is where I also get the opportunity to be involved in clinical research and to teach and mentor pharmacy students and residents. So the photo that you can see on the far right is one of my former residents who's presenting her research project at a professional conference. And it is also in my role as a clinical teacher that made me realize that my passion truly lies in clinical education and training. And I derive great rewards in seeing how students and residents develop both professionally and personally over the years. And it is this passion for teaching that brought me to my current role with the National University of Singapore. So I decided to move back home and join NUS in 2017. And I think the position that I am in right now is truly a perfect one for me, because it allows me to blend my interest for education and also to maintain a practice at one of our local hospitals. And in going through my career journey so far, I think there are some important lessons that I learned to appreciate, which I'd like to share with all of you this morning. First and foremost, I think this is particularly true for younger chemists, especially for our students who are currently pursuing an undergraduate degree in chemistry. I think I'd like you to know that a degree in chemistry is truly versatile. Besides learning about knowledge and lab skills, I think the degree itself also trains your critical and analytical thinking skills that are highly valuable and translatable to many other disciplines. And therefore, you should always have an open mind to consider and explore new options. And I think it is through this process where you actually discover more about yourselves, what are you good at and what you truly enjoy doing for your career in the future. And most importantly, I think to step out of your comfort zone, which may be uncomfortable or challenging at first, but I think with great challenges also come great rewards. I think one of the biggest challenge for me in my career so far is the transitioning back from being in the US for 12 years to working and practicing in Singapore. Learning about a new university and about a healthcare system wasn't easy to begin with, but I would say that this change truly has been one of the most beneficial for me and has brought about positive changes both professionally and personally. Yeah, and that actually brings me to the end of my sharing, and I look forward to your questions and interacting with more of you online later on during the panel discussion. Thank you.
You are muted, Fatima.
All right, thank you, Joel. Thank you, Dr. Han, for sharing your pathway, starting from chemistry to pharmacy to clinical education and practicing. Thank you so much, and we will be glad to see you again in the panel discussion. Thank you.
Great.
All right, so we will move on now to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Catherine Rollins. Can you see my slides? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. All right. So, Cathy, will you? All right. So our guest speaker is Dr. Catherine or Cathy Rollins. She will share with us how she got started in her chemistry pathway, starting from obtaining a degree in chemistry from University of Wisconsin until getting a PhD in chemistry from Northeastern University, and then having a postdoc training in the University of Bordeaux, and then transitioning actually to industry. So with that, without further ado, Dr. Cathy Rollins.
Great. Just get my screen. Let me know when you can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you again for having me as a speaker. I'm happy to be able to contribute to IYCN. I mentioned before I used to be a board member, and now I'm glad to contribute to the activities that you guys are all doing here. So just to reiterate, my name is Katie Rollins, Catherine, Dr. Catherine Rollins, and you can follow me on Twitter at Rollins ACA, which is a plant science reference, which is something that ties into my background. I'm from the Midwest, and I ended up going to undergraduate at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. It's in a small school in rural Wisconsin, but it was really a big foundation for me for becoming a scientist, especially because when I joined University of Wisconsin-Stout, I was an art major. So not many people can say that 10, 12 years later, they end up with a PhD in chemistry after starting in art, but I can't. So I was an art major and I was doing graphic design and thinking I was going to, grow up and move to France and be an artist. And I did grow up and move to France, but not as an artist, as a scientist. So I started off in art, and then I had a couple moments of like existential crises. I'm not sure whether I wanted to continue in art. Oops, did I lose my screen, or can you still see my slides?
We can see your slide right now.
Oh, you can see my slides?
No.
No? Okay, sorry about that. Where did it go?
Yep, here we go.
Now you can see my slides.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank
you. Sorry, now I can't see them either, so I just lost it. My bad, I just interrupted the thing. Where are my slides? There we are. Apologies for that. Okay, so anyways, yeah, I had a moment where I was not sure what I wanted to do for my career, and I had a moment where I changed my mind and I was invited to become a scientist, more or less. And I say invited because I became connected to another professor, and she said, "Oh, I'm looking to hire somebody to work in the plant biology lab because I need somebody to take care of the plants for me." I'm like, "Well, I can do that. I'm not a scientist, so I can water plants." But then that ended up growing, and I did end up becoming a scientist and studying plant biology, which then eventually led me to studying chemistry. So that's how I ended up with a wacky applied science degree where I had focuses in chemistry, plant biology, and art, where I just combined all the different classes I took and to the major that I had there. I did do a summer internship, which was also very transformative because it's what introduced me to mass spectrometry. So I went to the Daniel Danforth Plant Science Center in St. Louis, Missouri, and I was doing biofuel research, and I started learning about proteomics. And it was then that I started to be like, I actually kind of like working with the machines. I feel like I'm doing high stakes Legos. I get to like work with these machines and I can get some answers and tinker around. And I started to end up enjoying it. And I ended up focusing on mass spectrometry when I got to my PhD. I joined my PhD and I was working in a lab also doing a biofuel research, but eventually transitioned into a different lab in a different area of research. As the running theme of my career is that I change my mind a lot. So I'll agree with Zihan when I say that chemistry is a diverse field to be in, because you can switch around, you can do a wide variety of things. And I switched into doing multi-mass spectrometry imaging and top-down proteomics, and I was doing research in ALS, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. So I was working with mice brains, and I was looking at different stages of the disease and collecting mass spectrometry images. For those who maybe aren't familiar with the area of analytical chemistry, MALDI is an ionization source, and a couple different instruments, different detectors can now allow you to create what's considered to be like an ion image or mass spec image, with plenty of information about the molecules at different locations across tissue, whether that be tumors, or that be, in my case, mouse brains, or even fingerprints, all kinds of different things. And while in my PhD, two things are very fundamental. It was serving with IYCN and serving at NSYCC. So NSYCC is the Northeastern Section Younger Chemists Committee, and I served several roles on that board, and that was a really important step in my professional development. So I encourage anyone who is in your PhD or undergraduate to really consider doing some volunteer work, especially with an organization like this, because I really did learn professional development. I became more confident in public speaking. I became more confident in running meetings and organizing events. And it introduced me to a lot of different people, and it helped me kind of build the confidence and the skill set to go into the job field, which was a stressful thing because post-PhD, when I was trying to decide what to do, I did not know yet if I was ready for industry or if I wanted to go to academia. So I had moments I was applying to tons of different positions, both in industry and academia, and throwing a bunch of seeds to the wind and seeing what stuck. And I did have this dream as when I was young, when I wanted to be an artist, but also it came back again when I was a scientist. I've always wanted to live in France. I studied French. It's been a dream of mine. I have an opportunity I was given a one-year contract postdoc in Bordeaux, France. And I moved there and I did my 1 year. I drank some great wine and I became fluent in French. But at the end of my 1 year, I said, this is not for me. And that was a really important step. And luckily it was a 1 year contract. So I finished my term. I achieved what I was set out to do, was to just introduce top-down proteomics techniques to their mass spec facility. And I did some training and some classes, started some interesting research, but top-down proteomics just was not for me as the way that I thought it was. I really wanted to do multi-mass spectrometry imaging, but it was such a niche field that it was difficult to find a industry or even some certain labs. There was a limited number of labs where you could go study it. So I didn't think it would be possible for me to find a job, but I did, and I was really happy about this. So that's where I started Kratos Analytical in 2020, the beginning of this year. So I was hired as a global multi-application specialist. So they specifically hired me because I had experience in multi-MS imaging. I was searching on LinkedIn, searching all over the place, but I got in contact with a job recruiter who says, oh, you have the perfect expertise. They need somebody who knows how to do imaging. I said, oh, no way, I love that. So I was hired to be an application specialist, specifically to focus on imaging training. So an application specialist is what I do is I develop applications, as the name implies, but specifically for this particular benchtop multi-mass spectrometer, which is being multi-TOF mass spectrometer, which is being promoted to like classrooms and to other research facilities as like a low-cost mass spectrometer, but higher reward efficiency. I believe for Shimadzu, which owns Kratos Analytical, is speed and accuracy, and that's exactly what this instrument does. But I'm not in sales, so I'm not getting anything from this. Yeah, Shimadzu is a Japanese company, but it owns Kratos Analytical, based in Manchester, United Kingdom, where I am now. And so I do a lot of my day-to-day is still working in the lab, but I also get to do a lot of interface with different departments, like the software team. I provide support on their software evaluation to help make improvements. I also work with their R&D and I provide them samples and pass on customer requests and help them with design changes to the instruments and things like that. And if there wasn't the pandemic, I would be doing on-site training with customers and off-site training at different locations, at different universities and research facilities, and attending conferences to promote the products. So my job is not involving sales, it's just about supporting sales, which is good for me because I think I like having the balance of customer interaction and doing some businessy things, but still being able to play in the lab. So I've been doing a lot of playing in the lab lately, not as much as I would be pre-COVID, but still able to do a lot of good work developing new techniques and making application notes and interfacing with people remotely. So before I wrap up, I just going to throw out some ideas here. So we'll talk about this more and maybe in the panel discussion, but these are some of the questions I started to ask myself post-PhD and post-postdoc when I was trying to decide kind of where I wanted to go next. I was a long debate before I joined my postdoc to be like, is this for me? Do I like academia? Does someone do research? So these are some of the questions that I asked myself. And, there's not always an easy question, and it's not something to weigh the pros and cons. So I thought to myself, do I enjoy writing grants and publications? And, you did what you have to do to get to your PhD, but once I was at postdoc, I said, I actually don't know if I like this as much as I thought I did. And am I comfortable changing projects more frequently? Now that I'm a year in my new job, I kind of am. I'm still doing some things consistent, but I am able to be like, okay, this project, move on to something else. Sounds good to me. I'll move on to this. I won't go through all these questions because maybe you'd want to just discuss them yourself, but I had to really think about what will make me happy, what do I want to do with my time, how I want to spend time, how much do I want to be in the lab, what kind of working conditions or benefits do I want? So these all questions came to mind when I was considering my transition into industry and academia. If you're thinking about it now, and again, we can talk more about the discussion, I'd say brush up on your CV and work on getting it to 2 pages max and think more and look at someone from industry, look at it. You might want to consider what's important to put on your CV, what isn't important. And what academics consider important isn't necessarily what HR, who's not a non-expert HR person reviewing your CV isn't going to find interesting. And so practicing interview questions, that's something I had to kind of work on, like planning ahead for where do you see yourself in 5 years? And describe yourself, your weaknesses and strengths. So practicing those kind of talks. But search all possible resources. So I mentioned, I'll give a plug to VRS Recruitment, which is actually a job recruiter specifically in the field of chemistry. and specifically also in analytical chemistry. And they're the ones who helped me secure this job that I didn't even know existed, to be honest. I was looking at all over across trying to find jobs that I found relevant. It wasn't until I went for it with the recruiter that they told me of this position that was perfect for me. And I also went to the American Society of Mass Spectrometry job board. So that's another way you can find industry jobs you might not be aware of by going to organization websites. I also highly recommend to everybody, regardless of industry or academia, The Professor is In by Dr. Karen Kelsky. It was a book that really guided me through a lot of these moments, a lot of these questions when I'm trying to debate where I want my career to go. So that's it for me. Thank you, and I'll answer more questions and go back to any of those things that I talked about before.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and pathways and all about your transitioning and highlighting the voluntary work that you have done. That was great. If you have any question to Katie or any of other panelists, please don't hesitate to type your question in the chat box. We will be glad to address it again in the panel discussion. All right, so now we will move on to our next speaker, Dr. Nick Anastas. Dr. Nick will share with us how he has transitioned to his current job in government, particularly in the EPA, which stands for the Environmental Protection Agency in the USA. Dr. Nick, please.
Great, thank you, Fatima. Appreciate the introduction. And I also want to thank Ray Borg also for inviting me to speak here today. It's a great opportunity. So what I'd like to do is the same as everyone else, just describe my journey from how I got into the field of science generally through chemistry, and mine will, I think, appear a little bit different than the other speakers here today. So as Fatima said, I am a senior scientist now with the United States Environmental Protection Agency in the Office of Research and Development. So near the end of the talk, I will provide some opportunities where we can use chemists in maybe some areas that you weren't thinking of, where chemistry can actually fit and where we use chemistry to benefit the science that we're doing in ORD, research and development. So second slide, please. Wow, I've really changed. There we go. And before I begin, just a disclaimer. So any opinions, any facts that I say here today are mine and mine alone, and do not reflect any EPA policy or guidance. Just wanted to make sure that that was clear. But this is my long and winding road journey. And the gentleman on the right-hand side, you can see, is looking for somewhere to go. And he has some interesting, very wide glasses to see what the road ahead may hold for his particular journey. And for those of you who are Game of Thrones fans, you may recognize him. And maybe at the end during questions, we'll see who identified that particular person. But I started coming, I went to the University of Massachusetts at Boston as an undergraduate as a biology major. I came out of high school with music scholarships. Similar to Catherine, it was an art kind of background that I had. So I had music scholarships, but I decided to go into biology. And after I received my degree from the University of Massachusetts, I got a position in a clinical laboratory as a clinical toxicologist. So I was doing drug overdoses, therapeutic drug monitoring, different applications of chemistry. And while I was there, I learned gas chromatography, GCMS, LC, Flame AA. So I learned all of the analytical techniques that would benefit me further down the road. I never thought of that as a biology major. But as a member of the clinical toxicology group at this laboratory, these skills were necessary and I learned them on the job. So I spent 3 years there, and then I moved to an environmental testing laboratory. So I was the head of the environmental volatile organic mass spectrometry group. So we analyzed air, water, soil, tissue samples for the presence of organic chemicals, mostly volatiles, but sometimes semi-volatile chemicals. So I learned, again, deeper techniques and different techniques. An interesting fact was, back in the old days, this is around 1980. So most of you are nowhere near that age, but in the day, we actually, when we measured peaks coming off a gas chromatogram, so we looked at the chromatogram and we actually used a ruler to draw the baseline. So we actually did that physically. So I just wanted to give you a little background on how science has progressed in all of these years. So after, well, actually, as I was working as an environmental scientist, I went back to Northeastern University to get a degree in pharmacology, because my experiences as a clinical scientist really get me excited about the field of pharmacology. So I received a master's degree in pharmacology from Northeastern University. And so I had the analytical background. Now I had the pharmacology background. That prepared me to become a regulatory risk assessor at the Department of Environmental Protection in Massachusetts. So now we're starting to build something here. So I used my pharmacology degree to develop risk assessment methods. So I'm using toxicology now, understanding the toxicity data and other issues related to the chemistry of how these compounds work, what makes something actually toxic. And if you look at the gentleman right there, speaking of how we've progressed, the gentleman with the funny red hat, which I probably own, and the little book, which I know I own, that's Paracelsus. He's the father of toxicology. And his primary contribution to the field is the phrase that the dose makes the poison, solo dosis facit venenum. So he started out back in the 15th century with that concept, and we've evolved. And I'll speak a little bit more about that later, of how we've actually evolved. And a picture just to the right, the two gentlemen who are in front of, looks like a round bottom and a distillation apparatus. The person on the left is William von Dering, and the person on the right is R.B. Woodward. And those of you who are organic chemists realize that he is a Nobel Prize winner in organic chemistry. And we both grew up actually in the same town, which actually means nothing, but just a small little factoid. But what I want you to look at is what he's doing in that picture. I assume there's a volatile solvent in the bottom of that round bottom, methylene chloride, hexane, something. And he's got a cigarette in his mouth. So anyway, we've come a long, long way, as we all have. But and here's where the music and the science gets together. One night in the band room, I was having a discussion between sets with the piano player, and we were talking about different things. And he asked me if I ever thought about going back and getting my doctorate. And I really didn't think about it, but he said, if you want to, you can come and study with me. And I said, that sounds like a great idea. And the piano player in this particular band was Dr. John Warner, who along with Dr. Paul Anastas came up with green chemistry. So I went back to the University of Massachusetts at Boston and got my doctorate in green chemistry. And that's how I came to chemistry after the fact. So I didn't know much chemistry as a biology major, but I knew a bit more chemistry after I got my PhD. So I got the doctorate at UMass Boston, and I actually went back to teach on the faculty at the university, and I taught toxicology to green chemists. And that's where actually I met Ray. I met Ray Borg in the class. So things are starting to come together. After the doctorate, I became a scientist at the Office of Research and Development, focusing on green chemistry. And part of green chemistry, for those of you who are unfamiliar with that, is understanding how the chemistry of the structure-activity relationships, the structure-property relationships. So this is really where understanding the chemistry and how it influences hazard is important. So that was the primary journey there. And as a senior advisor in ORD, what I do is look at ways to apply chemistry in different ways. For example, in the drinking water program, looking at air methods, developing analytical methods to identify different, not only existing compounds, but unknown compounds, unpredicted compounds, developing computational models for quantitative structure-activity relationships, as Dr. Hahn was talking about before. What is the chemistry of the molecule that makes it active? And also legal team support. So chemists are actually needed and actually work with the legal department quite frequently. And the last picture, as I wrap up, if you look at the, not the mouse, we actually are working on animal-free methods using high throughput screening to reduce the number of animals used in testing. But the picture right above that is a famous chemist who never really worked as a chemist, and that is Margaret Thatcher. And she is she's a former prime minister in the UK. So there are many ways to use chemistry. Chemistry is applicable in a number of different unanticipated applications, even if you want to be the prime minister of the UK. So I look forward to the discussion section, and we can answer any questions. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you, Dr. Nick. Thank you for the great insight and the versatility of the educational background that you had until you got your PhD in chemistry at the end. And thank you again for sharing the exciting roles that you also took during your work, starting from applying testing for our water, soil, and air until you got to your current job, which is actually applying the concepts of green chemistry in developing methods to protect our environment. Thank you, and we are excited to have you in the panel discussion.
My pleasure.
All right,
thank you.
No problem. Now we will move on to our final panelist and speaker for today's workshop, Dr. Jenny Deng. Dr. Jenny, she got her polymer chemistry degree at the beginning, and now she is actually working in chemistry and law. We are so excited to hear from you about your pathway. Without further ado, Jenny.
Thank you. Welcome everyone. Thank you for the organizer to invite me to share my journey with you. So as you know that I am currently a patent counsel with Henkel Corporation. Henkel is a global company headquartered in Düsseldorf, Germany. It has about 140 years of history. It specializes in consumer and industrial products, which I will introduce to you later. I put my email address here just in case that you have questions later on for me, or if you want me to give you some reference for certain job opportunities. You can also link me in at your social network. Next slide, please. So here's the graph showing my pathway. As I was introduced, I received a bachelor degree in polymer chemistry in China, and then I came to the States to pursue my advanced degree. I received a master's degree in organic chemistry from Brandeis University in Massachusetts. And thereafter, I went to work in a few pharmaceutical companies, such as BASF Bioresearch Company, Abbott Laboratories, currently called AbbVie, and also Pfizer. As you know that in pharmaceutical companies, their goal is to discover, develop, produce, and manufacture and market medicines for patients to cure, vaccine, or alleviate the symptoms. So a very recent news is Pfizer. As you all know, we're in pandemic, and Pfizer announced that it has basically developed a COVID-19 vaccine, very promising. And on November 9th, the effective rate was reported as 90%, but just about yesterday, they reported it was 95% effective. So I'm very excited about that news. Interestingly, I just want to add one point since now I'm introducing myself after Nick. So Nick works for government, even though I have never worked with government, but the industry that I work with, either Pfizer or Henkel, we actually work closely with government. Like all the drugs need to be approved by FDA, US government, and Henkel sometimes have certain products, and those products need to be approved by EPA. So you never know, Nick, maybe someday I'll make a phone call to you to talk about our approvals. So anyway, so when I work at Pfizer, I was a bench chemist. So I worked on the benches doing reactions, organic synthesis primarily. However, I think that there's a slight twist in my career focus because Pfizer is a drug company, so I actually work closely with biologists. So we do not call ourselves as organic chemists. We call ourselves as medicinal chemists because we need to know a lot, not just synthesize, combine A with B in order to create C. We need to know why we want to create C. Based on the activities of C, we need to modify to make C prime, etc. So I learned a lot behind the scenes. While I was at Pfizer, I actually work closely with patent attorneys because we need to file patent protections to protect our IPs, intellectual property. I did not really realize how important it was until one time there was a project that I worked on. It was joint project with a biotech company. At the end of the term of the agreement, it was a time to renew it, but the relationship did not go so well. So basically, we were at the edge of breaking up. And then because that the parties were not so sure about who owns the improvement of further development, improvement meaning any of the newly developed intellectual property as a result of anything done in the project. So because we were not so sure about who owns the further improvement on the project, then we were told as a scientist, they do nothing. Okay, you cannot do anything because if you do something, it's just really add more complexity to this situation. So we were told to just kind of repeat what we did before, maybe scale up. So at that point, that made me realize the importance of the intellectual property. You really need to protect what you own. At the same time, another piece that I learned is that also in order for or product to be launched in the market, you make sure that you will not step into other people's other companies' IP space. So that is a part of work that patent attorneys typically will do. So that made me realize actually I could actually maybe leverage my chemistry knowledge with legal training. That will make me really somebody who can contribute more in the industry than just being a bench chemist. And also I assessed myself. At that point, I actually already had one child, and I really want to have two children because I came from China, and China at that time had one baby policy. I really want to have two children. That's why I escaped China. That's not actually the truth, right? I really want to come to the United States for different reasons. So I decided maybe I'll just wait until I give birth to another child and then pursue my goal to be a lawyer. And I also assessed myself. I really had, I always have confidence in myself. I know that I'm very good at logic thinking. I like to do things precisely, and I like to think comprehensively. That is kind of like in my gene. So I decided just to give it a try. So I actually do have a very good track record with Pfizer. So at that time, Pfizer does offer some advantage, benefit to let employees to pursue further educations with Pfizer pays the tuition. So after I gave birth to my second child, I applied to law school, and then I went to pursue my JD degree while working at Pfizer in the daytime. So I went to evening program. So after 3.5 years of hard work, I earned my JD. And then at that time, it was 2010. And unfortunately, US has some downturn economically, and quite a number of the law firms, they do not hire people. But luckily, with my education and work experience in chemistry field, IP law firm nearby my hometown actually hired me. So that was really great. So that started my journey in my IP career, in my legal career. So that was good. And when I work in the IP field, I really have to be very efficient, not only because I have a family with 2 children, but also because legal field is very demanding. So I need to work very efficiently. And also in the legal field, I was treated as an expert in chemistry. So they would ask me to work on many client matters, anything related to chemistry, or even if they work on those cases, they may ask me for kind of to solve their unsolvable problems. But you know that I do not know everything, right? I only have a bachelor degree in polymer chemistry. I have organic degree in the master degree, and I work in the industry for a few years. So basically, in the legal field, basically they say in a law firm, there will be no chance for you to learn to swim and then swim. So you basically learn to swim and swim at the same time. So I actually pushed myself to actually learn and applied my knowledge and on the go and then just do it. So actually that is a really good training. It's really hard, but it's really good training. So I think that helped me build up my confidence. I was able to learn. I still, even though from age point of view, I was 10 years older than the lawyers who just joined my law firm, but I really believe that I was still young in that sense. I was still energetic. And the downside of being at a law firm is that I still felt that I was chemist in my heart. I like to interact with scientists. So that's a piece of my like the desire has been taken away by working a law firm. And also another thing is that I miss the big picture. As I said, I'm a person who like to think comprehensively. After I work on a particular legal matter, I would like to know what's going on. Did you follow my advice? What's going on? Why did you ask me this question, etc.? But that does not happen in a law firm because you know that companies hired lawyers to work on particular matters, and we bill our hours and make our money, and the company try to make you focus on one particular area because they don't want to pay you more than they would like to pay you, right? So with that, I start to look into opportunities in corporations, because corporations, big corporations, typically have a legal department, and their legal department also need attorneys. So lucky enough, in about 3 years ago, Henkel actually relocated from their headquarters in Arizona to Connecticut, which is very close to where I live, Stamford, Connecticut. So I applied for that job and I was hired. So Henkel, as I show on this slide, is a global company with many products like adhesives. So they are the #1 adhesive company. The most famous brand is Loctite. Adhesive actually is used on many products, from airplanes, iPhones, and cutting boards, etc. So I did not realize that until I joined Henkel. And also Henkel has another sector. Adhesive is actually the industrial sector, is in the industrial sectors. And Henkel also have some products in the consumer products sectors, such as beauty care products, laundry care, and home care products. I am responsible for laundry and home care products. So again, my chemistry knowledge plays an important role because I was able to help them file patent applications and help them to run clearance review, freedom to operate, to make sure that all the products that are launched and put on the shelf will not be challenged by competitors, will not be forced to be taken off shelves. So that is about my journey, and let me see my notes here. And I think that I can give you a kind of some my 2 cents from my this long journey. And my advice is that set up your goal high, but do not set it too high. Because you don't want to say, hey, I want to be a Nobel Prize winner, which may never realize, right? But you don't need to set your goal to be too specific, because you never know what opportunities may turn up. You may want to grab it. You just want to set up your reasonable goal in a general direction. And you also need to kind of work around all your obstacles. So you may need to pick a different path. Like in my case is that I think that I want to put my priority first. I want to have children first, and then work around that and get my degree. So set your priority well, and also need to be agile, and you need to be adaptable. So you need to be a quick learner. So in sum, that you need to be really resilient in pursuing your career goal. That's my advice. Another thing is that I think it's really, really important, as far as I can tell, is that as I already aged myself, so I wouldn't mind to do it again. So I'm reasonably old in terms of, if you just compare me with legal like students just freshly graduate from the law school. Typically they're about, I think, about 27 years old to 30 years old. However, I'm still very competitive. The reason is that I actually build up my specialties throughout my careers. I build up my special niche. So that make me very marketable. That actually add to my job security. So I'm not a person who can easily be replaced. So I think that is something that everybody should think about it. I think that everybody pass will not be, I think, unlikely to be the same. even though we may cross our paths from time to time, but just think about that when you try to develop your career. That's all from me, and I look forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much for this exciting actually journey that started with experience on bench doing medicinal chemistry work, then moving to continue education in law, which is a totally different discipline, and then going to intellectual property field along with building your family. Thank you again for actually your tips and advices, which bring us to, you know, just believing in ourselves and believing that we are, every one of us is very unique, and how to actually as well like market ourselves. With that, I think we are done with our presentations for our panelists. And from here, I will pass it over to my colleague Ray to take over the panel discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Fatima. Right, so let's get into the panel discussion. All panelists, if you'd kindly unmute and show the video, we can yeah, jump into this. So yeah, what great talks. It really encompassed a wide variety of experiences and having a lot of common themes as well. I was looking at some of the questions before that were submitted before, as well as during, and I think that there was a lot of gems kind of in your own individual presentations that addressed some of these questions. But I want to dive a little deeper into some specific ones. Some general themes here in the questions have to do around planning, seeing opportunities, and making decisions. Now we have folks from all over the world in a lot of different positions, but I'm wondering if maybe you have any strategies, tips, or tools that you took in planning your career pathway. I know that in a lot of your presentations, it may have seemed kind of windy, but it actually seemed also quite linear, maybe in hindsight. So I'm wondering if we could get kind of like, you know, behind the scenes, what was going on in your mind or in that position when you're, you know, maybe at a band recital or practice, and somebody, you know, the keyboard person behind the keyboard is asking you to do a PhD, you know. So what else is going on in your mind? What kind of tools do you have to help with planning, seeing opportunities, and making a decision?
Well, I can talk a bit about my mental gymnastics when I was trying to figure out my career path. I just was like, I guess similarly, when you talk about your band story, just someone, like a professor telling me while I was bartending, you should like, oh, you should be a scientist. And I'm like, okay, I guess, you know, and then leading into that. But really in terms of like the career journey, what was really going through my mind a lot is like, okay, where do I see myself? Like, not just like the fantasy version of like where I see myself, but like the reality, like where do I want to be comfortable? Where do I want to be living? What kind of day-to-day do I want to do? What sort of personal goals do I have and how that can align? I spent a lot of time just like searching for jobs, brushing out my CV, looking at different companies in different places, because sometimes I say you might not even know that there is a company that exists that fits your criteria. And this is my first time actually working with a job recruiter too. Before that, I was stubborn, being like, no, I can find it myself. But then it wasn't until like I got connected to this job recruiter that I'm like, oh no, there are opportunities out there that they can like really, and they'll really kind of connect you in if they think you're a good fit. It really all came together very well. So I really recommend the job recruiter route. I'm trying to think of what else I mentioned in my presentation. Yeah, just like talking to your colleagues. Like, I'm sure we have a pretty wide network among, you know, and within it, not just within IYCN, but in general. Find like a friend or like a colleague or a former colleague, ask them for advice and ask them what they did. If you see someone you want to model your career after, ask them what kind of like their story and see if they'll look over your resume for you. I have to still do that to this day. I still have like a PhD student in the lab where I did my postdoc. She asked me if I review her CV, and she wanted to move into English speaking, from France to an English-speaking company, and she said, like, what does it look like in just American companies? So I was able to give her the perspective of what they want to see in a CV. So I don't know, reach out to your network. That's the key. Went a bit wide with it.
Yeah, I would suggest you to be really open-minded. Really open-minded. As I learned, at least from my legal career, is that you can learn to swim and swim at the same time. Yeah.
I think I will echo both what Jenny and Kathy has said. I think networking is important, not only professionally, but personally. And I think I'm a working testimony of that as well, because my current role is actually recommended by a personal friend. And I was confiding in her whether I should move closer back to home. And she forwarded along this job opportunity to me, which actually panned out really well. Something that I didn't expect to see myself in an academic role, being a clinical practitioner.
Nick, we cannot hear you.
Dr. Anastas, I think you're muted. Hold on. Can we un? Oh, no. Sean, do you know how to unmute?
There we go.
Okay, great.
Good.
Yes, it said muted by organizer. And oh my goodness, what did I say wrong now? But yeah, and you know, and everyone has a great story, and I think for me it was a random walk. I just kind of the reason I became a toxicologist in the clinical lab was because the hematology position that was open was midnight to 7. I didn't want to work nights, so I took this job in the toxicology department, and I didn't even know what toxicology was. But it turned out it was a great move, but it was just random. And then I learned the instrumentation that opened up a new field in the environmental the environmental field. You know, so for me it was a lot of random things, and you know, the discussion. I was perfectly happy being a risk assessor. You know, I had a master's degree. I was doing fine, but then one particular person who was doing interesting work. It was a random discussion, you know, at a break during a band rehearsal. Next thing you know, I have a PhD in green chemistry. So there are many ways to go. But I think what is important is what everybody is saying. Keep your options open, keep your eyes open, and look for connections that you never thought of before. You know, you look at the Pope. He was a chemist. He is a chemist. I don't think he ever thought about being the Pope.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, are there any tools that you've used, say like mapping out a 5-year plan or something like that, or say like web resources that you think would be useful now, just as like a tangible tool that folks that you might have used or folks could use in this process?
Well, I think you know, putting out a 1 year, a 3 year, or 5 year plan is very good, and just and also start expanding on your internet searches and look for different ways to communicate with groups that you don't really communicate with, but may have an opportunity to contribute to. But yeah, just think about where you want to go, and sometimes you don't know. But if you do have a strong plan, and some people do, definitely write it down and follow that.
Yeah, I think that LinkedIn is a very good one. I would suggest you to kind of use LinkedIn. Nowadays, companies post their advertisements, job opportunities all there, so it's so easy to use.
I think personally what has helped me, especially in making some difficult career decisions, I like to do a pros and cons analysis on a piece of paper. And I think weighing the options, you're never going to have an option where it's all pros. As long as you can see more possible benefits, I think that's something that you should give yourself that opportunity to try. Yeah, and ask yourself really what's the worst thing that can happen. And if that's something that you can foresee and be able to manage, I think that would be a great opportunity to step forward with.
I know the ACS has, American Chemical Society has Chem IDP, is like a way you can kind of like organize your professional goals in attending to like skills you want to learn, like and setting maybe more concrete goals for your research, but also setting more like professional goals. Like I had one was like become better at, get better at lecturing, because I was doing in my PhD some lecturing, and I said I want to work on becoming a better teacher, be a lecturer, and that was a goal I set myself for 2 years down the line, and I revisited it 2 years later. That's like a more tool if you really want to be like strict like that. But as my path is described, you don't always know which way you're going to go. So if you have like a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan, the book that I recommended earlier, it's called The Professor Is In. That was one I liked, and she has a little guide. The professor who wrote it has a little guide on kind of how to kind of prepare yourself and organize your path and stuff. But I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn as well, and I really just made like a big spreadsheet of like all the different jobs that I found that I thought were interesting, and I'm like region and like skill set, and I just made I love spreadsheets, and I made a big spreadsheet, and I was looking in France, because I was still living there. I was looking in the UK, I was looking back in the US, but really I'd say I actually found LinkedIn pretty useful. I know sometimes people think it's not that intuitive, but once you learn how to like search for things correctly, and again keeping an open mind, making a broad job search, it helps.
And also one last point from the government side, keep an eye on USA jobs, because I know at EPA, we're always looking for good talent. And there are we have such a wide range of different needs. You are likely to find something that it suits you, or something you'd like to try. So keep an eye on USA jobs, not only for EPA, but also USGS, FDA, government agency, CDC, especially now. So as chemists, there's a wealth of opportunity before you in the government.
All right, thank you for those responses. We have a question from Morton Hoffman, and I recognize this name from Boston when I spent some time up in New England in the U.S. And he says mentoring is the key to guidance toward career paths. What have been your formative mentorship experiences as a mentor or a mentee that have helped you along the way?
I can think of one specifically I referenced earlier. For the professors that actually got me into science, hired me seriously just to water the plants, and it grew from there. But that was like a huge moment for someone to see and kind of believe in me, even if they didn't know who I was. They gave me the opportunity to just try it, because I think that really was the biggest. I didn't think I would ever be a scientist, and somebody gave me the chance to try. And then once I did, I found I really liked it, and I had an aptitude for it. I had met Mort Hoffman, who asked the question, was a great mentor to me in Boston, so I shout out to Mort. But along the way, I met mentors in many different ways, and not always going to be your professor. They may just be someone you volunteer with, or they might be somebody you are roommates with. They may not even be in chemistry, but need someone, which is my case. My non-chemist roommate, I think, was like my sounding board for a lot of my moments of doubt and concern and figuring out where I want my career to go. So you should seek out mentors, like I say, wherever you can, and they can occur even in industry too. Like you can find coworkers and colleagues. It's just finding somebody who's willing to support you. And I still like being able to do that even now. Hope that answered the question properly.
Yeah, that was great. Does anyone have any other thoughts on mentorship?
Yeah, I would think that in my experience, I just keep on having contact with the patent attorneys with Pfizer who I worked with. So those people became my mentor and also give me moral support, especially during those challenging years, going through law school and working in law firms. So I think that basically depends on which career path you want to go to. Just try to reach out to those people.
And I had
I think
one, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nick, you're fine.
Yeah, I had a mentor over at Northeastern University, and his name was Dr. Robert Raffoff, and he was a pharmacognosist, and he did a lot of work in the rainforest back in the 1960s and 70s, and he was looking at plant chemistry and potential pharmaceutical applications of extracted compounds. So that really got me thinking about all of these interactions. So just somebody who's been in the field actually doing it, and he was very excited still. And he was probably in his late 70s when I was working with him, but showing those connections, and that really got me thinking in a different way. So it was a mentorship that says you can put botany with chemistry and add the pharmacology, and you've got a nice little triangle that works well together called pharmacognosy. And so he really got me thinking in a different way.
I think we've all had great mentors in our careers. Now, maybe on the other side of the spectrum, trying to mentor my students, I think something for us to remember is that they are fundamentally individuals of themselves. So really trying to help them explore would be the key. And something that I remind myself, and I especially in working with young people, really is to actually encourage them to explore. Sometimes people do have certain directions that they like to pursue, but I think all of our career pathways, I think, showcase that people's plans do change and we find new interests. And also when students actually have no idea what they want to do with themselves and their career in the future, which actually I don't blame them. When I was an undergrad for a very long time, I didn't know what I was going to do either. Choosing a path that offers diversity, offers more options, it would be the best recommendation to give at that point.
Yeah, that's a great segue into this next question. So there's a common theme in a lot of your stories of making career transitions through this pathway. And there's a question from Funman Fung in Singapore asking, how do you deal with people who question the change in your career path away from bench research or even chemistry itself?
I can relate to that feeling. I think when I decided, I was sort of wonder what was going through my parents' mind, where I'm like, I'm a scientist now, and they're like, wait, what? You know, or just telling people that I spent the first year of my my undergraduate doing art school, and then deciding I'm going to start jumping right into doing science, and then trying to explain to my different family, friends, and members what I wanted to do. You know, people might be confused. More often than not, they don't necessarily come from a point of antagonizing you, being like, why are you doing that? And most of the time they're just confused and don't know how to respond. So I try to be like, yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but I know I'm up for it, and try to just be positive and remember and have faith in your decision. Tough, easier said than done, but you know, sometimes when you have those opportunities to try something new, you kind of have to go in with both feet. And like I say, what was it that Jen, while you're swimming? I like that a lot. I think that happened to me a fair amount. I was just reflecting on a story when I started taking plant science courses, and I was just transitioning from art to science. And somebody brought up, all right, we have this molar concentration of a buffer solution. I'm like, a mole? What's a mole? Molar? And then my professor, ever so patiently, had to spend a ton of time trying to get the concept of a molarity across to me. And I had to get into chemistry yet. And so, again, I got my PhD in it eventually, but at the time I was like, what? So I think that that's where mentorship can be really helpful, but kind of go on both feet and don't try to not to be afraid if possible.
Yeah, I think courage is really the key. I've gone through that experience twice in my career. I think one is transitioning from chemistry to pharmacy. There is some background noises, are you giving up on the sciences? And also transitioning from practice to academia. So are you not into clinical practice anymore? Are you going to lose your skills, etc.? I think believing in what you want and not looking at what you are going to lose, but actually focus on what you will gain, the new knowledge and the new skill sets that you have will be extremely important. And think about it, I think, really for yourself. It has to make sense for you professionally and also personally. I think how it fits within your personal life, I think, is important as well.
Yeah, I think that from my point of view, I think that I try to explain to people like that I'm running towards an opportunity. I'm not running away from my past experience. To explain in that way, that may help. Yeah.
And in my case, I didn't start my PhD till I was 40 years old. So, most of my family and others said, why? And so it was, there was really no reason, but it was just a challenge. And you wanted to see if you could do it. And so sometimes it's, why do you climb the mountain? Because it's there. And sometimes it's no more complicated than that. But at 40 years old, it's just, I was the oldest guy in the class. Most people thought I was the janitor. Just who forgot to leave the building. But no, I was a student. And actually, getting back to that, that has a stigma to it too. When you're in classes with 22, 24-year-old people, it's tough. It's different. But then when I turned around and became a professor, then all of a sudden they said, "Weren't you just a student here?" But thank God you have students like Ray, proto Dr. Borg, who were excellent students, and he made life easy.
Oh, well, thank you. Those are all great. And actually, we have, this will be, I guess, the last or second to last question here from Lizzie Cook from South Africa says, "Hi, thank you for the great webinar. My question, have you found specializing in certain chemistry fields in graduate school has limited the jobs you were qualified for or made it harder to move to different job or specialization when you find out you would like to move to a different field?" Thanks.
Well, I kind of talked a bit about that in my presentation. Yeah, similarly for me, I felt that I was worried about that because while I do have the expertise broadly, I can say I'm expertise in mass spectrometry. You attend an American Society of Mass Spectrometry conference, there's a ton of different ways you can branch out. And then like the small molecule people don't like the big molecule people, and you like spread around. And there's the people who the people who do GCMS and people who do LCMS, and so there's so many different ways you can go. But I was worried about that myself because I did do kind of a niche area for my PhD, where it's like, well, I know I have skills that are really interesting and unique, but where can I apply them outside of industry? That's why I think it's important when you're a student or when you're in your research, is to be able to develop a wide variety. So that's why when I added on the top-down proteomics part, because for me, I said, well, for one thing, I knew it would be a really interesting paper, which is why I joined on that project, even though it's sort of hard to kind of tie it into the rest of my thesis. I said, well, this is a skill set that I kind of want to learn. It's a growing field, and it's something that will allow me to have more of a diverse array of skills. And you may find out you like it, may find out you don't, but try to see if you can try new projects in your current situation where you can learn other skill sets so that you're not so niche. But granted, if you are niche, then you probably know all the names from all the papers that you read, and you can make a note of them, which is what I did, and be like, apply for a job in their lab, apply for a job in their lab. So, or even so, now my field is changing a bit. Now there is some applications in industry. They're small, but they're there. So that's where networking and so looking up these names that are popping up in your papers can help.
Right. Well, thank you. Does anyone have anything else to add from the panel? We're coming up on time here. Okay, well, there were some more questions, but I think that we covered a lot of them. Yeah, I mean, this was just a really great dive into so many different pathways that folks have, and it was really enlightening for me, and I really thank you all for taking the time. to present and also share this panel. So thank you so much, Dr. Han, Dr. Rollins, Dr. Deng, and Dr. Anastas for taking the time. If folks have more questions, could they reach out to you directly through email? I think that we had said that, yeah, and we'll have that posted somewhere. And so, yes, again, thank you. And I'm going to transition now into just a couple announcements of exciting things that we have coming up. Let's see, can you guys see? Okay, you can see that. So IYCN has a continuation of this workshop series. The next one we have is science communication. So this will be very useful in sharpening those skills, some of which we talked about today by some of the speakers. This will be next month. The exact date is yet to be determined. So please stay tuned. It will be free and similar to this event. Let's see. So next we have also Chem Voices, which is a partnership between, this is an initiative that was the result of a partnership between IYCN and IUPAC to provide early career chemists with a platform for discussing and sharing experiences along with advice on topics of interest to them. We have 2 of them already pre-recorded, and you can see them, Resilience and Chemists Beyond the Bench, on the YouTube channel. And we have the next one coming up next Tuesday, and this one is Fostering Innovation Through Collaboration. And so this will be next Tuesday, November 24th, from 4 to 5:30 p.m. CET. Again, that's also free, and you can register for that. And then, yeah, I think that's actually all that we have. So thank you for attending, and thank you to our speakers for taking part in this workshop. And we look forward to seeing you at some of our future events. Thank you.